All right, people. So how we doing? And I wanted to go ahead and get this kicked off because I've been researching this for a while, and I just thought it'd be fun. It's a Sunday night, you know, and I'm out here, and I'm thinking about okay, how about we just have a discussion? Let's see where it goes. And what's up, Angel Charms? How you doing? I saw you over there on Miss Elite's channel, and I saw you over there, and I asked you if you'd be willing to go ahead and join me on, um, to at least come and watch or possibly contribute to my stream. So I said, okay, cool. She said, okay, cool. She'd be cool with it, and she said, okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start talking about this. Um, and see, how do you? Okay, now Angel Charms, you are now officially a moderator as well because I got a few other people who are moderators too. But I try to get anybody who you know wants to come on and contribute to the at a platform a moderator. So more so, just make sure people start commenting. Just make sure nobody gets disrespectful or starts talk crazy or anything, or tries to disrupt the what we're gonna be talking about tonight. Okay, so she said because she's listening to another vid. Somebody recorded the. Okay, so the person who recorded the last live, like who did that? Like, are you aware or you know what I mean? Like, because that sounds strange. Like, what was their intention of doing so? You know what I mean? More or less. But that being said, all right. Now, the 1978 Jonestown, uh, November 18th, 1978, um, Jonestown massacre. Um, Very interesting stuff. Very interesting to read about. Very interesting to talk about because this was a mass suicide. Okay, that occurred. Okay, and it was black folks that did it. And it's weird because black people technically don't have like a high suicide rate. Um, they really don't. So when you see stuff like this, it's like it becomes weird because it's like, how is you get all these people, down there in the jungle in Guyana? They let this man Jim Jones convince them, you know, to go down there in the jungle with him and go live in this compound. But there was all types of crazy shit going on. There was all types of abuse, and people were being held against their will and stuff once they got down there. He was brainwashing these people, okay, into believing all this crazy shit. You know what I mean? And you know, they started out, in San Francisco. Okay, they started out as a church, and as time went on, though, the from the research that I've looked at, the pastor Jim Jones, he started preaching like this super leftist, like communistic ideology. So by the time they went to Jonestown, he wasn't preaching the Bible no more. He was preaching communism to them pretty much. And if you listen to the tape, like the final tape of the sermon he was given as the people were taking the poison and shit, the people were getting on the mic and they was like, they were shouting out communism and socialism. before they killed themselves. You know what I mean? That was their thing, and it got weird. It got to a point like, how the hell did this man? And then they, these people have their children with them, and these people, they killed the babies first. They killed the babies, then the kids, and then they gave the poison to all the adults, and they all died, and ended up being 913 total deaths. Okay, and crazy. The U.S. government had to go down there. The U.S. Air Force had to go down there, literally, and get the bodies and bring them back to the United States so they could all be buried, because they're still U.S. citizens, even though a lot of them were technically, like, at least ideologically in protest against the U.S. government, because they felt that America was an unfair place and an unjust place, and all that type of thing. Ironically, when they all died, it was the U.S. government had to go and bring them all back to the U.S. so they can be, just so they can be buried. You know, so you have to ask yourself that. You spend all this time going down there. You know what I mean? And you thinking you escaping America and stuff, and then you die, and you get brought right back to the United States. Now think about that. Think about that for a second, because in our community, there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of escapism in our communities. This concept that Black people have of wanting to escape America, and why does that exist? Why does that mindset exist in our community? You know what I mean? We have to ask ourselves those things. Why do Black people feel the need to escape America? Why? Why do we allow ourselves to be convinced by people to adopt that type of mantra? Because when you look at all these other groups and stuff, these immigrants and stuff that end up coming here, they all want to come here. But it's like with Black folks, there's this ethos of trying to escape America. And it's like, escape and then go where? You sometimes we Black people leave America and they can go to other places, but then they can run into problems in those other places of the world, because these other parts of the world have their own laws, their own systems, their own things of how they do things. You know what I mean? And it's just crazy, man. It's crazy. So I want to look at the let's see, what will be the now, out of all the one of the things I'm gonna go over today will be the what's called, I got the article up in front of me. There's a really good blog about the Jonestown massacres. It's the it's San Diego State University Jonestown.San Diego State University.edu. San Diego State University has a whole institute dedicated to Jonestown, and it is exhaustively researched. And there's so much. I'll even put the link to the blog in the chat. There's so much you can learn about it. Just articles and articles and articles of stuff, and so I put it up. I put it up, but I don't see it coming up. Okay, now I see it. Because sometimes you can post something like in here. You can post something. Hold on. Let me get my Cash App banner up. Okay, sometimes you can post something, I feel like, in the you can post something on StreamYards, okay, but then when you look at the YouTube feed of it, what you posted isn't there, so you have to post it again, or you have to, like, I had to refresh the screen because it wasn't really loading like that. You know what I mean? So it was some crazy shit, crazy ass shit. It was okay. Now there were dozens of tape recordings of this. All right. Of, this the leader, Jim Jones, his pastor. There were dozens of tape recordings of his sermons and stuff, and even the so-called death tape, which was the tape of the final sermon where he was convincing him to commit to do the suicide and shit. And that is very hard to listen to because as he's speaking, you can hear the agony of these people. Okay, you can hear the agony of these people in the background. You can hear them crying. You can hear the babies and stuff crying because they're, as he's speaking, they're injecting the poison and feeding the poison to the kids and shit. And you can literally hear the kids screaming, "No, no, don't do this to me!" And they're dying. You can hear adults dying. You can hear people just. It's a hard thing to listen to. I don't know if I'm gonna play that today. I more so just want to read an article today about it. But one of the most interesting things about Jonestown is that they believe that was made at the Jonestown complex in Guyana. Okay, supposedly the day after the massacre. Now, after the massacre, nobody was left alive there. Everybody was dead. The few people that did escape, they had already left to a city in Guyana called Port Katuma, where that was like the entry point when a lot of them got there. It was the largest, closest city that they can get to, but it was hard to get there because it was a remote area. So that would have been the place that a lot of them went. Um, but and I lost my train of thought. Is that okay? So, but everybody else was dead. So when they looked at all the tapes, and that the FBI found when they investigated it, they found like all the tapes of his sermons and stuff that he gave to the people. Um, while he was there, and then they found this tape called it was called Q875, and there's a lot of mystery around it because the big question is who created it. Who created Q875, because it was a tape that was made the day after the massacre when everybody was supposed to have been dead. So evidently, after the so-called massacre, okay, after the so-called deaths, they go and they find this tape, and there are news reports on this tape of Jim Jones lawyers being found in Port Katuma, as well as preliminary reports of the so-called mass suicide, but it was so early that the reports weren't even confirmed yet. They were just saying, well, there are reports of a mass suicide, okay, having taken place, okay. But so we're gonna be discussing more so that aspect tonight, and like I said, anybody's welcome on. I already got some people. But see, here's the thing. When you come on, you're going to have to show me yourself a little bit before. Now, I'm looking at there's an individual named Jeanette. And I can see you, Jeanette. All right, so that's all good. But then there's another person says not a super spy, and all I see is a black screen. So I'm going to have to see something. You're going to have to come on and let me see something, to make sure, I don't want to put, take the risk of putting somebody on that's going to make me lose my my channel, because now this is not a super spy person. I don't know who you are, but if you could just show your face or whatever, I can go ahead and let you up. But this Janet individual, um, I'm gonna go ahead and let you up, and let you have a few words. Or what do you think about the subject, or do you have anything you want to add, or anything like that? All right, go ahead, bro. Yeah, I think you're muted. Okay, whoa, okay, okay. All right, so it's good that I took that individual down because um, because they was on some bullshit. And this not a super spy person. This other person, they look like they on some goofy stuff too. Because I don't see them. Um, uh, Now, Angel Charms is asking, what was that? It was some goofy shit, Angel Charms. Luckily, I clicked on it and got it out of here. Exactly at the moment I did, because whoever that was, they weren't trying to be productive and contribute to this conversation. All right, but so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share. All right, so this is it. We're gonna talk about this tape, and we're gonna talk about this tape. All right, and this is actually gonna be kind of like my first time. Um, and there's this other individual up here. Yeah, well, there's a bunch of dudes coming up. Um, there's a bunch of people coming up, but some of them look weird. And like, I don't think I'm gonna let a lot of these people up, because there's this other dude. Yeah, these people don't look like. Yeah, this look like some weird ass shit. All right, all right. I'm gonna just get rid of a lot of these people, man. Okay, so let's do this. It says, okay, closing in on QA75 by Joseph Diekman. Okay, out of the hundreds of audio tapes pulled out of Jonestown, Guyana, following the tragic events of November 18th, 1978, one tape continues to perplex researchers. Audio tape QA75 was found along with the hundreds of other recordings that comprise the People's Temple audio tape collection. The material in this tape is unique, consisting of four open air recordings of radio broadcasts concerning the shooting death of Congressman Leo Ryan, as well as unconfirmed reports of a mass suicide in Jonestown. Okay, the existence of the tape, however, challenges long held beliefs about the events of November 18th, 1978, and forces researchers to seek answers to a host of questions. Fielding McGee III, primary researcher for the Jonestown Institute, has posed 5 questions based on QA75 and its contents, 3 of which I will use as a basis for this paper. Okay. McGee's questions include: who made the tape? Where was the tape made? Why was the tape made? Why was it left behind? What were the people doing as the tape was made? For this paper, I have chose to concentrate on the who, where, and why questions. I will also include a brief paragraph on when, as well as my own questions and suppositions throughout. It will be noted that any ideas I present here are my own, based on reasonable conclusions that I have drawn from the material I have access to. I am in no way presenting an infallible proof of an absolute scenario. Okay. So, continues. Okay. Although not a question posed by McGee, I feel that I must first touch briefly on when the tape was made. The unlabeled tape yields no clues as to when it was made, its contents, or its purpose. However, its date of origin lies within itself. Throughout the four broadcasts, many references were made to the shootings that took place on Saturday, and one report in particular refers to events that occurred last night. Okay, during segment two, a female reporter speaks of individuals killed last night and makes reference to last night's attack. Based on these statements, it is reasonable to conclude that the tape was made on the 19th of November, the day after the murder suicide. But who could have possibly been in Jonestown on the 19th of November 1978 to make the tape in the first place? Okay, because Jonestown had a radio room where they did all the Jim Jones's recordings and stuff, and he would record propaganda broadcast and stuff. Now it says now can now Angel Charms, if you're listening, can you hear me fine? Because I'm getting a sign that says that my connection is unstable, or it says it's fairly good. But is just let me know if my connection is good or not. Or okay, now it's gone away and it's not saying anything about the connection. But can you more or less hear me, or is my connection good? Any feedback on that would be much appreciated. Okay. She said yes, I hear you. Okay, cool. All right. And so we're going to continue. It says, okay, the task of answering exactly who made QA75 is nearly impossible given what researchers have to go on. It is much easier to speculate who could have made the recording. In my opinion, there are three broad and unequally weighted possibilities. One, Temple members who had not yet committed suicide. Okay. Two, Temple members who had escaped only to return after the rest had died. Or three, outsiders. The field of outsiders include local Guyanese and or American military or American agents of some kind. However, each possibility can be supported or criticized, thus making the task of answering the question that much more difficult. Okay. So it's very interesting. What do they mean when they say American agents? Very interesting. Okay. Um, Now it says, okay, if the first possibility is to be considered that as of then undead temple members made the tape, then some interesting problems arise that need resolution. First, we would have to accept that a small number of individuals, presumably a group of elite insiders, either made the conscious decision to temporarily abstain from the ritual or were ordered to abstain from the ritual for approximately 24 hours with a specific reason for doing so, perhaps to make the tape. Obviously, this scenario flies in the face of common belief that everyone who died in Jonestown did so on November 18th, 1978, given the reasonable conclusion that the tape was made on the 19th. Okay. So, very interesting. Okay. Secondly, if we believe this, then we are faced with the challenge of reconciling the fact that while 4 to 5 people sat around talking and listening to radio broadcasts, over 900 of their friends and family lay dead all around them on the jungle floor. Moreover, they worked with the knowledge that within a few hours they would be joining their fallen comrades. In my mind, this is an unlikely scenario due to what I call the laugh factor. On side 2 of Q875, near the end of the recording, laughter can be heard twice, interspersed in the muffled conversation of a small group of men. It seems hard to accept that people would be able to casually converse and laugh, knowing they were just hours away from their own deaths, especially under such unique and extreme circumstances. For this reason, I believe this first scenario is highly improbable. Okay. Okay. So, as to be fair, it has been suggested that in this scenario, The individuals were under a unique kind of stress, and that laughing could not necessarily be inappropriate behavior. The basis for this argument, as far as I understand it, is that the circumstances surrounding the deaths of their friends and family were by their nature a kind of irrational reaction to a unique kind of stimulation. More to the point, mass suicide is irrational behavior by itself. So why would mere laughter during such a stressful time seem irrational in comparison, and thus preclude as of then undead temple members from making the tape? Okay. To this point, I can only say that the laugh factor does not absolutely preclude this possibility, but I still believe that it makes this scenario rather unlikely. If one considers the depth of love and commitment that many temple members felt for for one another, then it becomes even harder to believe that those as of then undead temple members or insiders would callously joke with each other after such a tragic event had taken place. Okay. As former temple member Laura Cole said, anyone from the temple would have been sobbing at that point, not talking. We were flooded into the Georgetown house. I mean, flooded and distraught. So no one who had been in any way part of PT would have been, or we're talking about the People's Temple, okay, would have been conversing with that in the background so soon afterwards. Okay. Additionally, if insiders did make Q875, why then do they not identify themselves? Why did they not make some kind of comment as to the purpose of the recording they were making, such as today is the 19th of November, 1978. My name is Joe Blow, and I am making this recording as a last entry to the Jonestown audio archives. Soon I too will step over, and so on. Some have speculated as to the precise identity of the people whose voices are heard on Q875. Staying within the context of the insider theory, the possibilities include Maria Katisaris and Jim Jones himself. After countless reviews of the tape, I strongly disagree with those who say that Jones' voice is present on the tape. Of the many audible voices, several belong to African American males, while the one or two Caucasian sounding voices, also male, are clearly not Jones. Also, if Jones were alive on November 19th, presumably helping to make the tape, wouldn't Hyacinth Thrash have heard the shot that killed him? Okay. Yet she makes no mention of it. The composition of the speakers alone weakens the insider theory, as it is generally understood that Caucasian females filled most of the leadership positions within People's Temple. Why then would a group of males, mostly black, be given the responsibility of carrying out this final act? Okay, now that's very interesting. You got to think about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You got to think about that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, the People's Temple, although they claimed that they were like this big progressive organization, and they fought for, civil rights and a lot of progressive things, their leadership was predominantly white. And if you do the research, black people were not at the top of the leadership of the People's Temple, even though they made it the majority of the members. All the leadership was white, and all the handling of the financial resources, they had millions and millions of dollars. They were getting their black members to sell their houses and give Jim Jones all their money. Okay, so this was $1 million organization. And then when they got to Guyana, they were literally feeding them like rice and beans every day, while Jim Jones and them, they got the the inner circle, they got to eat good, but everybody else was like on this rice and bean diet, every single day. Okay. So let's continue. The only reasonable argument that could support the insider theory are, first, the fact that no one, to my knowledge, has come forward to claim responsibility for making Q875. It stands to reason that the individuals responsible for making the tape have failed to come forward simply because after making the tape, they too ended their own lives. Secondly, the voices of on side 2 of the tape are speaking English with American accents, and only one speaker's voice has a British Guyanese edge to it. Leads me to reasonably conclude that a group of local Amerindians or Guyanese were not responsible for making QH75. Also, the diverse makeup of the voices on side 2 of the tape is consistent with the diverse makeup of residents in Jonestown. However, these two arguments alone are not enough to convince me that this scenario is the most likely one. And the second possibility that exists is that a group of defectors and or Jonestown escapees returned the next day and made the tape. But then again, we must ask, why hasn't anyone come forward? Certainly, many of the survivors of November 18th, 1970 are still alive today. Some are aware that QH75 has been discovered and examined. In my opinion, there is no reasonable explanation to account for silence on the part of the people who made the tape in this specific scenario. Additionally, what conceivable motivation would this group have had for doing so? Therefore, I find the possibility highly improbable and nearly insulting to those survivors who have been so forthcoming with information regarding the events in Jonestown. Okay. All right. In my opinion, the third possibility is most likely, but it is not without its problems, for it only leads the researcher down the undesirable conspiracy theory path and inevitably creates even more questions. Okay. And conspiracy theories aside, the presence of outsiders in Jonestown, presumably, but this is discussed more in the where section, after the tragic events could account for a QH75 being made. Supporting this possibility, I return to the laugh factor. I believe that outsiders rather than insiders would have been more apt to lounge around joking and chatting with each other. Although this idea may still appear odd, given that human nature is rather constant and predictable, it is far easier to accept that outsiders would be able to distance themselves from the carnage around them. And if conspiracy theories are introduced into the mix, it becomes even easier to believe that these individuals would be able to act so casually under the circumstances. Consider the Guyanese Defense Force. We know that the first GDF contingent arrived in Jonestown sometime in the late morning hours on the 19th of November. We also know that the GDF had no love for Jonestown or its residents, as evidenced by their mere spectatorship of the shooting at Port Katuma the day before. Isn't it possible that at least one of the cold, giggling voices on QH75, the speaker with the Guyanese accent, belonged to a GDF member? Okay. And that's an interesting thing, because a big part of the concept of them going to Guyana was that, Guyana was a South American country, is a black South American country. 10 years earlier, in about 1970, they had gotten their independence from the British. Okay. So that was a big part of why, the motivation for them to go down there is that, okay, we're relieving, America and all the negative media attention that the People's Temple was getting. And, because their leader, Jim Jones, and we're going to Guyana, this kind of like leftist, more socialist black nation, and we're going to strike out a new life out here in the jungle, away from the prying eyes of America. But in reality, though, the relations between the Guyanese and the Jonestown resident wasn't really that good. Okay. The outsiders argument is strengthened by notions of conspiracy, given that no one has come forward to claim responsibility for making the tape. This is the very same argument one could use to support the first scenario, thus muddying both arguments. But if one considers the many conspiracy theories surrounding the events in Jonestown, the quarter-century-long silence is even more understandable. As I stated before, all three of these scenarios can be supported or criticized depending upon how deep one wishes to dig or infer. But until researchers find credible evidence that identifies the makers of QH75, we can only speculate on the matter. Okay. So the question is where? Okay. Q875 was found amongst more than 900 other audio tapes in Jonestown. The logical inference is that it was made there, but there has been some debate about this. The best possible alternative would be that the tape was made in Georgetown, but clues from the tape weaken any argument for this possibility. The first obvious obstacle one must overcome is the problem of transportation. Georgetown is about 250 miles from Jonestown. Okay, a considerable distance to travel just to mysteriously place an otherwise inconspicuous tape randomly amongst other tapes. Okay, the second problem is apparent in the audible portion of the low conversation on side two of the tape. At one point, one male is heard saying he's in Georgetown. It seems logical to conclude that the tape wasn't made in Georgetown simply because most people don't use language this way. More likely, if the tape had been in Georgetown, the person would have said, he's here, or he's here in town. And thirdly, we can conclude that the tape was not made in Georgetown due to the unmistakable growl whine of a dog during segment 2 on side 1 of the tape. And shortly after, the newsman says, in Georgetown, unintelligible word interrupted by U.S. State Department spokesman Tom Rushton. The low rumblings of a dog can be heard in the background. Twice, a black male can be heard telling the dog to shut up, which McGee has mistakenly, in my opinion, transcribed as shit, supposedly in reaction to what the newscaster was saying. The presence of a dog supports the idea of the tape being made in Jonestown rather than Georgetown because first-hand accounts show that there were no dogs in Georgetown. Laura Cole said that although the residents adopted a dog at the Temple's Georgetown headquarters, it was not until after the 19th November. Okay. Concerning the presence of dogs in Jonestown, we know from witness statements and photographic evidence that dogs were present in Jonestown. Combined together, these points create a compelling argument for placing the origin of Q875 inside Jonestown. Okay. So interesting. Okay, then it says, okay, why? Part of the mystery of Q875 is its mere existence. There seems to be no highly appreciable reason for it being made, especially since it lacks any kind of identification or indication of purpose anywhere on the tape. One researcher has based his opinion about why the tape was made on the assumption that it was made by insiders prior to their own demise. His argument reasons that since the tape was made by as of then undead Jonestown residents, they experienced a sort of visceral reaction that drove them to make the recording as part of the Temple's ongoing practice of documenting their own history. Okay. Although I find the basic premise for the argument to be flawed, okay, the reasoning is clear, accurate, and totally plausible. Okay. However, the flow chart of possible reasons must include the idea that outsiders made Q875, and this leaves researchers with the problem of speculating why they would make the tape. I can think of no logical reason why any outsider would do this. This is perhaps the strongest circumstance against outsiders being the makers of Q875. Okay. In this case, motive is a heavily weighted component for all arguments and must be included in any speculation of the matter. If we ask why outsiders made the tape, we cannot forget to ask why have they not come forward to say they were in Jonestown and, oh, by the way, we made a tape while we were there. Okay. Final words. Prior to setting fingers to keyboards to write this, I reviewed time and again the many possible answers to the questions posed by McGee. At best, the end result was a complex web of interrelated factors, a flow chart of gigantic proportions that skewed in every direction. The ifs, thens, and therefores staggered my mind as I tried to break down each segment. What I was left with was the same thing I had when I started, a big question mark. A friend put it best when he said, That Q875 is a complete enigma. Minor clues aside, this is, in my opinion, a very accurate label. However, I feel that it is important for researchers to keep chipping away at it. We may never be able to decisively answer all the questions posed by McGee, but I believe it is possible to move ever closer to the truth. It is our obligation as historians and researchers to do so. Okay. So that's the article by Joseph Diekman. All right. Um, okay. Okay. Now there's another one by Matthew Thomas Farrell. All right. Um, there's another article by him, and he has some theories himself. So we'll go ahead and read that one as well. Let me take a quick uh, intermission for a drink, and I'll be right back. All right. So back. All right. Says shredding the suspect list on Q875 by Matthew Thomas Farrell. Okay. With little doubt, one of the biggest puzzles to come out of Jonestown tragedy in recent times is the discovery of tape Q875, which was recorded at least half a day after the deaths. Until now, it was generally accepted that the last of the deaths occurred around midnight of November 18th, 1978, and that presumably the few on site survivors, roughly 20 of Jones's inner circle, pulled a Houdini and disappeared shortly thereafter. Okay. Um, After that, Jonestown was thought to have been deserted. I hesitate to use the term ghost town for about 20 hours until the Guyanese Defense Force arrived at dusk on the 19th. Okay, but much as the crucial Christian period between Good Friday and Easter Sunday, the Jonestown chronology has a 24-hour gap in it. What happened in the time between the last of the deaths at midnight and the arrival of little the GDF little less than a day later. Okay. At the very least, Q875 requires that the generally accepted chronology of events during the mysterious 24 hours be rewritten. Clearly, someone was on site at that time, though who and why are unknown. If we can determine who was there, it might be possible to extrapolate why. Okay. All right. The voices on the tape, at least five males and one female, speak English with American accents, except for one possibly Guyanese speaker, so we can immediately rule out any locals. Realistically, this leaves us with three possibilities for suspects: the U.S. military and the U.S. government, i.e., the CIA, and the aforementioned missing 20. Cases can be made for and against each group. In the interest of helping curious readers draw or debunk their own theories over this, I offer the following analysis of each suspect scenario without endorsing any, other than to mention that I present the groups in order of what I consider least to most likely. Okay. Um, the military. Rumors that the American military, usually Army Rangers or Green Berets, were on site during the lost time between the 18th and 19th have been lurking around for decades, though there is no credible evidence or paper trail to back this up. Of course, one wouldn't expect there to be such blatant evidence if this were a covert operation. All such stories of military involvement are at least secondhand, and the sources disseminating them tend to be conspiracy theories of government groups that would have an interest in Jonestown. The military is low on the totem pole, so the question of motive is immediately raised. Most conspiracists would respond that the army would be pawns in this case, acting on orders from elsewhere, with Langley, Virginia being the most popular spot. Okay, now Langley, Virginia, that's like the headquarters of the CIA. Okay. Alas, this shows a lack of understanding of how the government works. The Defense Department and the intelligence community are separate entities, and there has always been a bit of a rivalry between the two and the reluctance to cooperate. There are contemporary examples of collaboration between the two, of course, with the failed Iranian hostage rescue mission being the first instance. Even that, however, not only took an executive order, but more to the point required months of planning and coordination. With Jonestown, we are talking about a window of opportunity of less than 24 hours with next to no advance notice. Okay. That said, if any group had the means to get in and out on such short call, and without anyone knowing, it would be the military. The American military did have a presence throughout Central America. The flight time from a base in Panama, for example, to northern Guyana is only a few hours. Okay. The Guyanese officials at the nearest airstrip, Pocotuma, have steadfastly insisted that no one from the outside world showed up in the time between the suicide and the GDF rescue mission. So access to Jonestown would have to be done by helicopter in terms of pulling off this logistical coup, and the military would be best set up to do it. Okay. The CIA. Alleged agency involvement in Jonestown has been a hotly debated topic over the past 25 years and is indeed fertile grounds for a bumper crop of conspiracy theories. Jim Jones was a Marxist messiah type who floated plans to relocate to the Soviet Union. So, in this Cold War context, it stretches credibility to think that the government wouldn't have at the very least a passive interest in Jonestown. Unlike the above mentioned military scenario, coming up with a motive for the CIA to make a quick trip to Jonestown requires very little imagination. Likewise, if one is exceedingly lenient and generous as to their capabilities, they could conceivably have been able to pull off the admittedly impressive feat of assembling a team on no notice and dipping in and out without anyone knowing. Okay. QA75 itself offers two very tantalizing, if ambiguous, and open-ended clues suggesting this. First, the people on tape can be heard rummaging around the radio room as if they were looking for something. The GDF themselves reported that Jonestown seemed to have been either looted or ransacked when they showed up. Although this is usually attributed to local Native Amerindians and Guyanese living nearby, the people on QA75 are clearly American, and from the context of the sound, seem to be looking for something incriminating evidence, perhaps. Okay. Second, there is this snippet of dialogue. He's in Georgetown with Richard. Unintelligible, right? Unintelligible sounds like now. Unintelligible sounds like unless. Interrupting, I thought you said unintelligible, laughs. Now, for those of you who don't know about this Richard individual, Richard Dwyer, Richard, I believe, is a reference to Richard Dwyer, who was a known CIA agent who was operating in Guyana. And he actually went to the airstrip with the people who were the defectors who chose to leave with Congressman Leo Ryan. And it is reported that he was at the airstrip when they had the shooting, and everybody, ran and scattered. And of course, Congressman Leo Ryan and the NBC news cameramen were killed, and a number of people were injured. Okay, but so that's who Richard is probably referring to in the sentence. Okay, interrupting. I thought you said he unintelligible last. Unintelligible. Who was it? He was the unintelligible, huh? He was the executor of the settlement in Costa Rica, right? He's the bigwig. Okay, all right. So there were two survivors named Richard Clark and Richard Gennaro. Neither were in Georgetown during the time frame. Of course, there was a third Richard involved with the events. Richard Dwyer was an agency man who survived the Port Katima shootout and even gets a hotly debated reference from Jim Jones himself on the infamous death tape. If the people on QA75 are indeed referring to Mr. Dwyer, we have as close to a smoking gun of CIA involvement as we are probably going to get. Okay, obviously it is tenuous at best to assert that the Richard in question is Richard Dwyer for two reasons. I have been unable to determine how Dwyer referred to himself, thus influencing what others would call him. There are multiple forms of name Rich, Rick, Dick, etc. Also, it is unclear just when QA75 was recorded, as efforts to timestamp it against the broadcast times of the news broadcast in the background have, as of now, been unsuccessful. If Q875 was recorded only early enough, there may not have been enough time to have evacuated him to Georgetown and have this information known to the people on the tape. Okay. However, the speakers on the tape show more than a passing familiarity with the whole situation, as reference to the bigwig Costa Rica executor demonstrates what you would expect of CLA officers handling the case. Okay. Now, of course, this would also be evidence for the third scenario of the suspects, the missing 20. It is known that a number of Jones' inner circle survived the suicides and subsequently dropped out of sight. Since they were obviously on site at the time of the suicides, it was plausible to allow that they would stick around longer than is generally accepted. It is also plausible to attribute the general ransacking evidence as Jonestown to them removing any self-incriminating evidence. Of course, this begs the question, if they stuck around to remove incriminating evidence, why would they be dumb enough to put themselves on tape? Okay. You gotta ask that. Okay. Putting that plot hole in logic aside, the very fact that this was taped at all seems to suggest members of the missing 20 made it. Q875 was recorded on one of the existing cassettes at Jonestown, so whoever made it knew where the cassette cache was and then apparently went to the trouble of returning it to that location. I have trouble believing that military or CIA agents would have that detailed knowledge of the commune. More to the point, they wouldn't be so sloppy and stupid as to record such a tape, as it defeats the whole purpose of the clandestine black bag operation. Okay. Conversely, if Q875 were made for the purpose of misinformation or misdirection, you would think that it would be better than it is. The audio parts would be clear and contain dialogue that would serve as expository for whatever red herring they were trying to set up. The very existence of Q875 is an amateur's gaffe that flies in the face of professional training. However, it is a bit more understandable of people who had just been through a traumatic event, such as the deaths of 900 plus friends, and weren't quite thinking straight. That said, one of the curiosities of tape is the vocal tone of the speakers. They seem cool, calm, and collected, whereas you think the members of the missing 20 would be exceedingly stressed out. One final thought on the matter that tends to support the tape being made by People's Temple survivors: one of the voices is female, and much of Jones' inner circle, as opposed to other power structures of the period, was female. Not that I want to sound misogynistic, but it strikes me as highly unlikely that a woman would have been included in any type of military government operation of this type. Obviously, could be wrong, as determining precedent for this is exceedingly difficult. and beyond my meager means. Other than these three suspect scenarios, there are others, but almost all of them require leaps of faith that even televangelists wouldn't try. Occam's razor points toward the tape having been made by the missing 20, but that is just my opinion, and I would be wrong. Simply put, we do not know who recorded QA75 or why. Okay. Okay. So, with that being said, now um, from what we've seen so far of this tape, so we know that the Jonestown massacre, okay, happened on November 18th in Guyana, right, in Jonestown, Guyana. Okay, 900 plus of the members died. Okay, there were like two or three or four people who actually escaped. Or who managed to wiggle their way out of the compound while the suicides were occurring. And there were a group of 11 people who actually left on November 17th. Um, there was a woman, her name was Wagner. She took her 6-year-old son with her. They had a secret plot. It was 11 of them, and they escaped to Matthews Ridge the previous day. So the question is, who would have been still in the commune to make this tape? So now they in the article it said that there were supposedly like a missing 20 inner circle people of Jim Jones who just disappeared during the so-called executions, or not the murder suicide. They just disappeared. Could they have been the ones to make it? And I've always wondered that because let me go to the other one. Um, because there was a woman who they thought was involved. Was I'm looking for her name right now. And for anybody who would like to come up or discuss this, the link is up there. Uh, to join. So feel free, please. Um, it's like okay. So it seems hard to accept that people would be able to casually converse and laugh, knowing they were just hours away. To be fair, it has been suggested that in this scenario, okay, Okay, so now this is the interesting part from the Dykeman one. It says, some have speculated as to the precise identity of the people whose voices are heard on Q875. Staying within the context of the insider theory, the possibilities include Maria Katasaris and Jim Jones himself. Okay, I'm gonna put her name up because I need to do a little bit of research on her. Let me look at her. Oh shit. Okay. 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 Now this is a letter that she wrote, I believe. Okay. But okay, now Angel Charm says, I have to go, have to get ready for work tomorrow. I will finish listening to a replay. Then thank you. Have a good night. Okay. Have a good night, Angel Charms. Thank you for watching. But that's interesting, you know. That's interesting. But all right, so for right now, I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. Let me know what y'all think. I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna make this probably into a series and continue it later. But let me know what y'all think, and I'm gonna call it quits for right now. But thanks for watching.